Well, let's get started.
Perfect. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our event, Careers for Graduate Students Employer Panel, as part of our JumpStart series. My name is Caroline Ramirez. I'm the Health and Science Industry Advisor at University Career Services. And I'm pleased to welcome you all today. Thank you to everyone on the line for being here. So I'm going to go ahead and get our event started and move along our slides real quick. So there are a couple of guidelines and some important information to cover for today. If you can see my screen for our attendees, but you can't hear me, you can try calling in with the audio, and that's the audio listed there that you can use. As mentioned before, as you should have logged in using your Mason email. If not, please leave the event and then rejoin using your Mason email address, just to make sure that we can track you all and make sure if you want any of the slides or any information, we could send that to you. Also, please note we are recording this session. Okay. You may hear from me if you're not using your Mason email, just to verify any attendance. Okay, we will have plenty of time for the audience to ask questions of our wonderful panelists for today. For asking questions, we're going to be using the chat function, not the Q&A function. When you do use the chat box, make sure that you select all panelists and attendees. That way, everyone can see the question that you ask, because I'm sure we all have similar questions that we want to ask our panelists. Okay, make sure that you do make that selection, all panelists and attendees, because it's not the default. When you select chat, it will go to just all panelists. Make sure you make that change in the chat box. Alternatively, if you wanted to ask your question through audio, you can raise your hand. We will see that on the back end, and we can unmute you so that you can verbally ask your question to our panelists. Okay. Next slide here is where you will find those options. So on the bottom of your screen, you should see these three icons. If you want to ask your question via chat, you'll just select the chat box. You'll make the change to all panelists and attendees, ask your question. Or like I said, if you want to use audio, you can just select raise hand and we'll see that, okay? And that's just the sample. To the to box should be to all panelists and attendees, okay? If you do have a question for a specific panelist, you can just write their name in your question. So to Rebecca, for example, and then just continue on with your question. All right. Without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to hand it over to our moderator for today, which is my wonderful colleague, Tracy Watson.
Hello, everyone. I am Tracy Watson. I'm one of our associate directors here at University Career Services, and our team is the Industry Advising Employer Development team, of which we have, of course, Caroline on the team, and then our colleague, Mary Claire, is also on the call as well. So I'm going to get started. I'm really excited to have these members, have these organizations represented on the panel to talk with you today. They're going to be representing government, they're representing corporate industry, and also academia, which I know many of our master's degrees and PhD students are very interested in. Not only are they here to network with you and tell you more about their organizations and what they do at their organizations, but they're also here to give you insights and tips on networking, job searching, and the job search process. So I'm going to begin shortly by asking the panelists to introduce themselves and to tell us a little bit about their organizations, their role at the organizations. And I know a few of them have some upcoming recruiting events here at Mason. And so if they have those, I'll encourage you to share. If not, I can share those as well. And if you, the audience, if you have questions as they come up, I have a few that are already prepared to kind of get the panelists warmed up and to get you attendees to kind of hear a little bit. But if you have questions, begin thinking of those, and you can put them in chat. You don't have to wait. You can go ahead and put those in chat, and then my colleague Caroline, as we transition to one, question, she'll be able to interject and elevate your question to the panel. All right. So let's get started. And we have I'm just going to give brief, but then I'll let you guys each introduce yourselves more thoroughly and introduce your organizations. But we have Jillian Simmons, who's representing M.C.Dean, and M.C.Dean has been an amazing partner at George Mason University throughout many departments. And so really excited to have them on the line. We have Rebecca Cavender, and she is with the Oak Ridge Institute for Science and Education. And I know that her and Caroline have worked together, and they actually have some positions already posted in Handshake. Going back to M.C.Dean, M.C.Dean is registered for our upcoming fall career fair. So again, like you're talking with organizations who have a vested interest in Mason as talent. So really excited to have them. And we also have Dr. Ali Weinstein. And Dr. Ali Weinstein has been on quite a few search committees, I believe, and hired many people in academia. And so I think we're going to hear some really good tips and information for those of you that are thinking about going into academia and how to prepare for that. And George Mason University is always ranks as one of the top employers for our Mason alumni. So really excited to have George Mason represented on the panel as well. So I'll get started by allowing you guys, and maybe I'll start just because I said Julaine's name first. We can start with Julaine to introduce yourself, what you do at M.C.Dean, and then maybe for those people on the line that may not be as familiar with M.C.Dean, sharing with them a little bit about what it is.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tracy. Appreciate the intro, and thank you everybody for taking the time to join the session today. So again, Jillian Simmons, I am a graduate with an electrical engineering degree from Florida Tech and a master's in electrical from Georgia Tech. I started off my career in research, went through Bell Labs, and then progressed in the industry. I've been in the workforce for about 20 years and at M.C.Dean for 10 of those years. Prior to joining Dean, I actually worked for a series of startups and incubated more startups out of those. So it was a very fun part of my career. A little bit about M.C.Dean. So we are a privately held engineering firm here in the DC region. We actually have our headquarters in Tysons, but we are a worldwide organization. We do about $1 billion in revenue. About 70% of my division is federal contracting, and the balance is more commercial, like data center work. So the heart of the company is an engineering construction company. We do electrical construction, and in my division, I actually do electronic security, both government and commercial. The culture of the firm is one of innovation. You have a lot of autonomy, and I'm excited to share with you the perspective from industry for what we're looking for candidates and to help guide you in the career hunt process. It's a pretty exciting and crazy time right now, but I'm glad to be here.
Thank you, Julaine. Let's go over to Rebecca.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining us. My name is Rebecca Cavender, and I work for a contract with the DOE called ORAU, the Oak Ridge Institute for Science and Education. And what we do is we place about 8,000 participants or interns, fellows a year at different federal agencies. And George Mason, most of you guys in the last 5 years, we've placed about 80 at the CDC, FDA, EPA, and FBI. We also have internship programs and fellowship programs with NIH, with Department of Defense, Department of Energy. There's about 20 different federal agencies that we place participants at. So those are students or recent graduates that have earned their degree within the last 5 years. So specifically, I can speak more to, different types of positions at CDC, EPA, FDA, NIH, FBI. We also have a lot of openings with the USDA. There's several different agencies within there that we place folks at as well. They are all STEM degree opportunities, and these are mentors who are looking for recent graduates or current students. As long as you have a degree and are willing to learn and be trained in something new and exciting.
Wonderful, thank you, Rebecca. And Dr. Weinstein, we'd love to hear, I know you have a a great resume. We love to hear a little bit about what you're doing over in your department, and also, you know, just a little bit about looking for those applicants, those tenured applicants, and being on the search committee.
Yep, thank you. And then thanks for letting me join. I'm excited to be here and on the panel with the other distinguished women here. I'm going to apologize up front for background noise. I am working at home, as we all do, and lots of people running around my house. So I apologize if you hear background noises. And that's why my camera will probably go on and off a little bit. So I am an associate professor in the Department of Global and Community Health, which is in the College of Health and Human Services. And I'm actually a psychologist by training. So I also have a psych degree background as well. I was looking at my history to preparing for today, and I have served on over 20 search committees in my 13 years at George Mason. So lots of experience at looking at resumes and CVs and the difference between those two things, and trying to identify candidates at multiple levels. So depending on the university, search committees are the main way people get hired. Whether you're a faculty person, whether you're applying for sort of a research assistantship, or you're applying to any of the other types of positions at universities, a lot of times search committee is the way that it's done here. So I'm excited to answer any questions you might have about a career path in the academic world.
Thank you all so much for your introductions. Again, attendees, as you're thinking about questions, if they're sparking something in you that you have questions about, definitely put those into chat. I'm going to start with a few of our predefined questions, but happy to also defer some of mine as you guys have your questions in. So just to get started, there are some differences between an undergraduate and a graduate level, if you have a master's degree or a PhD level job search. For you guys, as you're looking at applicants and talking with job seekers, what differences would you expect to see in a graduate level applicant versus an undergraduate applicant? And I'll just open it up for anyone to take first, and then you guys can each follow.
So I can start. I think for us in the industry where we're looking for engineering expertise, we're looking for experience. We're looking for more years under your belt. Maybe you've gone to get a graduate degree after working in industry for a few years. Another variation would also be expertise in a specialty. Perhaps you are a data analytics person. Perhaps you understand software development schemas differently than, say, a fresh graduate. So we are looking for a little bit more specialization, and we think that that allows for you to come in at a more senior level.
Great.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. I know for our graduate and PhD students, we expect them to have most of the basic skills. I'll refer this to more of a laboratory setting, like just know how to basic techniques inside of a laboratory. Not necessarily for a bachelor's, but definitely in the master's and PhD level. And I've had a lot of mentors, come to me and say, these people just don't have, they've never been in a lab before, and I have to spend the first month teaching them how to clean a beaker. So making sure that they have, you have direct experience in a lab, whether it was within a class or you were doing some part-time work on the side inside a laboratory or, in industry to get that, just the basic skills under your belt.
And I guess I can weigh in as well. I think sort of amount is a big thing. So if you're thinking of sort of a CV, which is a curriculum vitae, which is a very comprehensive document, right? The length will vary based on an undergraduate versus a master's student versus PhD versus postdoc. So we expect to sort of see those amounts follow sort of the trajectory of where you've reached in sort of your degree process. I think the other thing we're looking for an undergraduate in particular is, did you go beyond your coursework, particularly sort of in academia, where my field is, we want to see that people have engaged on campus. If we're looking for someone at a bachelor's level, that they've experienced what academia is like, even outside the classroom. So that's something that we really focus in terms of an undergraduate type level. At a master's level, then I think I would echo what others were saying, sort of specialization. You have an area now that's sort of your area, that you have sort of a level of expertise that you didn't have at the undergraduate level.
Yeah, I think you raised a good topic on the undergraduate expectations, because in industry, we want to see that you've done internships or co-ops. You know, those are valuable opportunities maybe to learn what you don't want to do as much as what you do want to do. So you narrowing in on the type of thing you're looking to be is important for that fit. We are looking for people who want to come to our culture and fit in with us and be similar to us. And we want you to stay a long time. And so that drives really in the interview process, having the conversation about expectations, you know, and understanding, even especially with undergraduate, because the coursework is so basic and broad. You really want to help your candidates narrow in through the interview process as to what they're looking for, even in terms of technologies for us. So.
Very good. And so it seems that even across different industries, there's a lot of similarities, really diving into that specialty and finding ways to demonstrate and explore that in opportunities outside the classroom. So thank you for that. I'm going to go to my second question, and again, then I'll check back with Caroline to see if we have some questions. So as folks become more specialized in their fields, networking opportunities become even greater importance in their career trajectory. What are some resources or avenues for graduate level networking? Or perhaps like when you're looking at resumes and you're talking to candidates, which kind of networking or maybe their professional organizations are really, you know, impressing on you that this is a serious candidate?
So I think the word that you ended with in terms of professional organizations on the academic side, that's the best networking and the way that you really show your seriousness about your field. So you want to figure out what are those professional memberships. I think, you know, talking with faculty experience is an easy way to get to that, right? But so someone like me who happens to be in health psychology, there's 3 to 4 different organizations that I can join. It's not just one health psych org, and I reach different entities by being a part of those different organizations. So I think sort of professional membership organization is really helpful. So again, just in my world, the American Psychological Association, APA is this huge organization, but then they have a health psych division and a sports psych division and a rehab psych division, right? And so then you can get smaller and smaller, so you can get to a place where networking becomes easier. So again, you want to look for opportunities at a large organization, but usually there's breakouts or committees or smaller parts of that organization that you can then sort of engage with.
Yeah, I think it's kind of two separate types of networking that you do if you're an undergraduate where you're broad and not specialized versus a graduate, to your point, Allie. And I think at the undergraduate level, you should really be leveraging upperclassmen, right? They're going to graduate and go to a different company or go somewhere, you know, use that, you know, understand where those upperclassmen are going. And then also on your campuses, you know, you can also join organizations. And as an employer, we find it appealing because, you know, I'll say this about engineers, right? They're typically a little bit more introverted than perhaps some of the other disciplines. So being a part of an organization shows interaction because you have to work with customers, you have to work with teams. You know, that interaction capability is a valuable thing that shows a different side of academia. But networking is something you need to learn to do early, and you need to cultivate those relationships because, you know, me, 20 years of my career, it makes a big difference as to what opportunities I've had over the span of my career by maintaining those networks even after you get the job.
Yeah, and I'll go on what Julaine said. I mean, the personal networking and keeping in touch with everybody is very important, from whom you've worked with or went to school with, and they have moved on. Additionally, I think for the graduate level, at least in the STEM field, that seeing the different publications that you have authored or co-authored, especially co-authored, when you know that you have, it shows that you've been working with other peers or mentors or scientists or faculty, and you can rely on those contacts later on. And putting those on your CV definitely makes it a lot longer.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we have two questions that are coming in. I'm going to jump to those first and then we'll come back. So one's around career switchers, someone who has been in a field for a while. Maybe they're going back, they're retooling, getting a different degree, and they're wondering how to make themselves a stronger candidate. And so what kind of advice would you have for someone who's maybe had maybe not a direct experience, have had some outside experiences of the field, came back, really delving into a career field now and want to make themselves, you know, get to that interview process so they can share their story and really wow you all?
So I can start. Sorry, my fellow panelists, I keep jumping in. I'll be quiet on the next one. What I always advise my students who do things like this, we have a lot of second career students in our program, is to make the connection between your first career and your second career. What have you done in your first career that enhances your understanding, or what connections can you make in your second career that someone who didn't have your first career can't make? So you sort of turn those experiences you had into an asset to your future career. So again, where do you do this? To me, this happens maybe in a cover letter, where you sort of can lay out, and also you can maybe explain if there's a gap, right? The cover letter can help you do those things because a resume obviously is a listing, but try to turn it into a strength and really think through how that previous experience informs your future career in this sort of second career or second undertaking.
I think that's great advice. The other thing that I think is appealing about someone who has, one, the courage to make a major change, and two, the commitment to make that investment in themselves, is one of a mindset of continuous learning. That's a really big deal, right? You don't just come out of school with a degree and all of a sudden you're set for life. You have to continuously evolve what you do and who you are. And I think employers want to see that. They want to see that self-investment to stay abreast of technology because it's changing so quick in the field that we're in. And you need to be that kind of culture. And I think, to your point, Ali, to spin that into a positive could really work to your advantage to get people's attention. So that was a good question, I thought.
Yeah, and like what Ali said in a cover letter, I think it is so important to highlight why there are changes on your resume. And I know that at least in the ORAU program that we oversee, we welcome those mid-career changers in the STEM fields, and there's probably similar things in other online application tools, but usually there's a place to write a short essay answer, or they're asking some essay questions. And that's another great place to put that kind of information to help make you stand out and explain, like Ali said, how does what you did in the past, how can you combine it with what you're doing now, and why does that make you stronger than, say, someone who just had the most recent degree that you have?
Yeah, and I think it's also really good because if you can highlight how it makes you more of a diverse person within the culture of that firm you're going to, or that place you're going to, that's a strength. You know, we want to see people who come from education, you know, former teachers or former construction workers that have invested in them. Like, we like the diversity of the perspectives that all those people bring, because that's what makes our team more well-rounded. So don't be intimidated that just because your background's different, that you're not going to be equally as appealing to employers.
I thank you all for sharing that. We hear, you know, this kind of question a lot from our career switchers, but being that we get to talk to employers a lot, we know how much that you value, you know, those types of job seekers. And also throwing it a little bit back to our networking question, being able to network and learn a little bit more about these industries helps you make that connection that you're talking about. So really leveraging your opportunities to network. Another question that I'm seeing in chat, it sounds like it might be very specific to Rebecca, but I'm also going to broaden it out. So Rebecca, you might be able to specifically answer, but for our other panelists as well, when you're looking at resumes or CVs, what are some things that really stand out for you that you're looking for that make you, you know, really take that resume and put it in the, I need to check this again a little bit later pile, as opposed to, you know, I don't know if this one's going to make it. And then especially for you, Rebecca, they're wondering what really stands out on a resume for the CDC.
Okay. So I've looked at lots of resumes from all, you know, all different majors and degrees, and typically the ones that stand out are the ones that where they list presentations they've given, because that is showing, you know, public speaking and being prepared to answer questions in front of a group of people. You don't see that in a lot of resumes. The resumes that kind of get put back of the pile are like, here's where I graduated from, and here's maybe 1 or 2 part-time jobs I've had, and that's it. So the ones that have publications or papers or chapters they've helped to review, the professional organizations they're a part of, and even maybe not even career-related organizations, like if they're part of other committees or organizations outside of academia or outside of industry, because it just shows that you're more well-rounded and can maybe just work with a different group of people and different audience. In regards to CDC, I think for them themselves, I think we've mentioned that, is to have some type of experience outside of just the basic coursework you're doing, to showcase that you are really interested in it, and not just, I'm just going to apply here and there because I got my degree now, so this is what I do. But to show some outside interest, something that you put effort into, or other certificate programs, or other workshops. I know that there's a lot of virtual workshops right now, or certificate programs that you can attend. So showing that you're willing to put in the extra effort and not just your basic coursework.
Yeah, I 1000% agree with that. If you don't have lists of relevant things in the sector that you're trying to get into, you're just going to get swept under the rug, right? If you can invest in yourself and get a cert, in my world, it's IT certification, cybersecurity certifications, things that show that you applied for something that can be used as a resume builder when I submit you to my customers to say, hey, I've got great talent on my team. Think about that. I'm also presenting you to the end users. So you're investing in yourself, continuous learning we talked about earlier. And, you know, be specific. Talk about the specific classes and the things that you learned and the skills that you were attracted to. It shows me how you think and what you like and how you would fit, right? Like, I've got this puzzle piece. I got to find where you fit in my organization. And if you can't give me something tangible to hold on to, anything specific, makes it really hard to go further into an interview.
So I think it's a little bit different in sort of applying for academic jobs. So again, we're dealing with a CV, which is this very, very long document. But I hope this doesn't disappoint anyone, but when we have for example, a faculty position, we might have, you know, 150 to 200 applicants. So we browse the resumes, and then the resumes that catch our eye, then we read the cover letter. So your resume is really important to sort of grab our attention. And for me, one tip that I might share is the job description is really important. So we agonize over the job description and the details of the job description. So if we say we're really interested in someone who has women's health experience, and I'm browsing your resume and I see nothing about women's health, I'm not going to the cover letter. So make sure that your resume is speaking to the job descriptions and the sort of the entities that we're really interested in looking for, because we're trying to sift through applicants and getting to the people that really sort of fit that job description well.
Great. I'm going to go a little bit off script because we are talking about CVs and resumes, and I just want to maybe level the playing field just to make sure everyone on the line knows. So wondering if one, if we could share the difference between a CV and a resume, just to make sure that everyone kind of understands. And then I know that, Allie, you talked a little bit about length. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that. You said, like, I know when I see a CV that's a master's degree student versus a PhD or postdoc, what kind of students are going to ask? How many numbers? How many pages? And then also for Julaine and Rebecca, any kind of like tips or things around the resume that you're seeing? Do you also want a 10-page resume over there at M.C.Dean?
Oh, no.
So please, if you guys can all kind of just tap into that question a little bit. Thank you.
So, and remembering that it's been a long time since I wrote a resume, but in my mind, resumes are like 1 to 2 pages, like at most in my head. And so a CV, there's no limits. So I have reviewed 27-page CVs from people who are very advanced in their careers, right? So again, if you're talking about someone just out of undergrad, I mean, 1 to 2 pages, that feels pretty normal. A graduate student at a master's level, then we would probably be moving to 2 to 3 pages. A PhD student who might have been in their PhD program for 6 years, right? Remembering that, then, 4 or 5, if there's presentations and publications. So remember your seat. So one of the things on the CV that's different is that you list every single presentation, abstract, article, all of those things, every committee that you served on, every membership that you have. So all of that goes on. There's no sorting really, usually in a CV. Obviously, if it's not relevant to academia at all, it probably doesn't belong on your CV. But other than that, it's a full accounting of sort of your academic life. The CV is curriculum vitae, and vitae means life. So it's supposed to be your life on your paper. So, and then, someone from a postdoc, 2 years, adding another couple pages because you're probably very productive in your postdoc. So it is, I'm not saying that someone in an undergrad should have a very long document, but it sort of increases with your years of experience, because it's not like a resume, right, where you would keep it at about the same length, regardless of how much time you spend in. Your curriculum vitae keeps growing and growing the longer you're in. So I think mine right now is like 14 pages, something ridiculous like that at this moment.
So I think in terms of resumes, right, if you're coming out of undergrad, more than a page means that you don't know how to be succinct and get to the point, because that's my time you're taking. But when you get to graduate and work experience, I think 2 to 3 pages is reasonable, as long as it's meaty content with real information, as opposed to what I would call fluff. The things that are going to hook my attention are the certs that we talked about, right? The specific experience and maybe the things that you're good at. Talk about a problem. Give us a specific example of things that you did and what your specific contribution was on the team, right? Numbers. Think about how to quantify the scope and complexity of something you're doing. Paint a picture for me, right? The more specific information you can share about what you've done, the more I'll understand where you fit for me. So those are the kinds of things that I think really can help you stand out. So I don't have to ask every question, and we can go to the next level in the interview quicker versus sort of the basics.
Yeah, and I think, at least for speaking to the undergrad, in regards to the resume, 1 to 2 pages is enough in that regard. But if you're either for the resume or the CV, if you really need to have a separate resume for each job you're applying to. Yes. Because you could have done 20 different things at your previous position, whether it was part-time or school related, but only 5 of those things relate to this one job and another 5 things relate to this one job. You really want to expand those things and make those stand out, and not just list every single little thing that you did. So you need to really make a concerted effort to tailor your resume to the job you're applying for.
Yeah, that's great advice. I actually, for myself, during my career, kept a master resume, and I delete stuff out that's not as focused for the job that I'm applying to, or the customer I'm writing my resume for. So, that's really good advice to customize it, because you want it to line up. We call it buzzword bingo. And the job description is going to have criteria in there, and it's your job to get your experience to line up to the words that are in that job description. It's just that simple.
I'm writing down buzzword bingo. I'll be using that in our appointments with students. Thank you. So I'm going to run over to Caroline. Caroline, are you seeing any questions or any hands raised?
I don't see any questions in the chat, and I'm checking right now if I see any hands raised. Oh, we just got a question come through in the chat. The question is, in terms of customization, sometimes I feel as though I'm plagiarizing. Do we need to be careful with that when we customize? So I think this is in direct relation to what we were just talking about with that buzzword bingo.
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, it comes across pretty clear when you're just copying and pasting the job description words. We know that, right? We can tell, right? We want to hear how you have done something that lines up with that function, that responsibility, that task. You know, and then talk about your successes, talk about the outcome, talk about the result that you personally contributed to. You can even put quotes in there from your supervisors, from your customers, from your peers. Brag about yourself, right? This is the time to do it. You want to hook us. So I think that you don't need to worry about the plagiarizing so much as adding value, right? What's your message to the person across the table from you or across the screen? You know, those are your real opportunities as how to hook them with your resume.
All right, I'm going to go on to my next question, but again, attendees, if you have questions, throw them in chat or raise your hand, and Caroline will let me know. So sometimes we hear from our students that they struggle to find opportunities that are somewhere between like entry level, like I can find an entry level job, or I also see a job that says 10 years experience. And they're confused about like, what, you know, should I be applying to these jobs? I'm a master's degree student, I'm a PhD student. Are these the type of jobs I should be looking for? Do you have any advice for graduate level job seekers who are maybe either perusing your websites looking for these types of opportunities, things that they should be looking for, get stumbled upon, I don't know if this is where I'm at. Am I entry level because this is my first, you know, true professional experience, or does my research and things like that count? So I just want to throw that.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think that you have to have a little bit of willingness to expand what you would think you would do. And I say that because, you know, you don't necessarily know what that company's doing by just reading the job description, right? So you're going to have to do a little research about the companies you're targeting and the locations you're trying to get to understand the framework of that job description within the context of the business they do. And you're going to, I would encourage you to apply to things that maybe you think you are a little outside of your reach, because if you can have a customized resume to address the features of what your skills are and your capabilities are, you might be surprised. So I think I would just encourage you to take something that may not be the perfect fit on first glance. If you have a targeted company, subset of companies you're going after or locations, that's worth doing.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Jillian in regards to trying to take a look at all the opportunities and don't pigeonhole yourself into just one like subsector of a position. In regards to the positions at ORAU, they are all for entry-level graduates within 1 to 5 years of receiving a degree. And in some instances, you know, on special case-by-case basis, you can have a degree beyond the 5 years. But that's more for a mid-career changer. So most of ours are for the entry levels. And, you know, I think some of our mentors, some of them actually look for people who have just graduated within a year. And that's all they want to look at is just those fresh out of college, because they really do appreciate the new perspectives that new graduates bring to their team. And then some are looking for more like 4 or 5 years from their degree, because that means they've had some, you know, other experiences as a postdoc or doing some other type of work. But I guess for us, that's an easy one to answer, since they're all entry level or they're all student appointments over the summertime.
I'm not sure I have much to add. The only thing I would say is, again, looking at what people are looking for, there are sort of required qualifications and then preferred qualifications. So if you have to hit the required, right? So if it says you need a master's degree in this area and you don't have it, you're sort of wasting your time to apply. But if it's saying you have that master's degree and then it's saying some of these preferred someone who's had 10 years of experience and you've had 4 years of experience, I think this is where you can sort of highlight yourself and really try to show how you're a good fit in other ways besides those. So again, understanding sort of the required versus the preferred, and usually it's written pretty clearly if there are some types of required qualifications.
Great, thank you for elevating that. That's an important tip. Caroline, anything coming in? Any hands raised?
Not just yet.
Okay, well, I'd like to talk about this special time that we're in, where, as we had talked about, we're all kind of virtually working here. How would you say that COVID-19 is changing interview etiquette? So, you know, are you guys doing interviews in person? If they are in person, do we come with a mask? Are we touching hands? Are we shaking hands? And if you're holding them virtually, what are some important tips that job seekers should be mindful of if they are interviewing by video or maybe by phone?
So I think, so yes, we're absolutely interviewing. We're hiring very aggressively, actually. And we are doing them through video. We use Teams heavily in my organization as well as Zoom. So some basic tips, right? You know, you want to be respectful of being early to your interview. You want to be good about communicating, confirming that you're going to be there for the person you're meeting with, and do a follow-up and a thank you for any salient points or emphasis you thought of afterwards, that you use that opportunity, right? Because the more you're touching those interviewers, you're going to be in the forefront of their minds, right? So in-person does happen occasionally. We typically are doing it for some more of our senior positions to look for more kind of chemistry because they're 15 years experience type of thing. But it always starts with a Zoom video interview first. So some basics, right? What's your background, right? Is your shirt clean? You know, is a dog put away? I mean, I've got bad dogs, so. So yeah, you definitely want to make sure that you've taken care of some of that housekeeping stuff, right? You know, and have a set of questions like you would in a normal interview. Think through, how can you understand what the culture is of the place I'm going to? What is your criteria? What are your hot buttons? Maybe they've got clearances that they need. Maybe they want someone who's willing to travel, right? Be prepared and think through what you're wanting to do and what your comfort level is so that you have a crisp answer in that interview. So I think from a COVID-19, if it is in person you're asked to do, always default to having a mask. Depending on where you guys are, assuming you're all in this region, you know, face coverings are mandatory, and default to keeping that on and in following the etiquette of the room, right? Be proactive and bring your own hand sanitizer when you go, right? You show respect when you do that. There's a lot of policies about social distancing and, you know, err on the side of that distance as another method of respect. It's a first impression. You really want to be thoughtful, and especially in COVID-19, when some people have certain situations, you want to be mindful of that.
Thank you, Julaine. Really good advice. Do others have some?
Yeah, I just recently got done with a slew of virtual interviews for a position that we're hiring in my team. And it's been interesting because the different platforms that you're using, whether it's Zoom or Skype or GoToMeeting or Teams, the audio is different for each one of those. So when I remember one candidate we interviewed, when I was explaining the job responsibilities, she kept, you know, saying like, yeah, like I understand what you're saying, or just making noises, which in some platforms that doesn't make any difference, but in our platform with GoToMeeting, like the audio just kept cutting in and out for everybody, and she couldn't hear everything that I was saying. And then I had to repeat myself. So don't make noises when the interviewer is speaking. Mute yourself. Other things is the fact that you actually kind of have somewhat of an advantage, because you can take a look at, you can go to so many different websites and here's a list of common interview questions. Well, like jot those answers down real quick somewhere on a Post-it note where you can see those answers, short little responses, so you're not so stressed to try to remember all those little strengths and weaknesses and why you want the job and what skills do you have. So you can have a little cheat sheet there. Nobody can tell that you have one. And I mean, all the other interview, suggestions from different articles and blogs and websites. I think the other one that I think is really important is to move your laptop up if you're using a video screen. Just check the camera angles, make sure that shadows aren't falling on you very strangely. We can't really see you. So, just play around with where you are and what the lighting looks like and what your video looks like before you get on the call.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything to add. That was all right on. And I'll just say, as a public health faculty member, wear your mask and bring your hand sanitizer, right? Keep 6 feet away, no shaking hands, right? So I don't think anyone would blame you for doing that, right? Just what Julaine was saying, right? It's about respect. And if you go overcautious, because that won't be looked on poorly, being undercautious, that might have a bad impression. And plus, you're protecting the people around you. So we always want to do that.
Thank you so much. Good points, Allie. So we do have a question. Any of you guys, or any of you ladies that would like to answer, jump right in. When applying for a job that only requires a bachelor's degree, should I omit that I have a PhD? Should I mention it on my resume if the job only requires a bachelor's degree?
So in my opinion, I think you always come forward with the truth, right? And I don't think that being overqualified is a bad thing in my role. I think it draws questions, right? It draws questions as to why are you applying to this position? Perhaps those reasons, right, associated with where you need to be, geography, family situations, great conversations to have to understand who you are. But if it comes out later that you have it and looks like you've hidden it, it could backfire on you from a negative impression perspective. So, be proud of who you are, be proud of what you've accomplished, and just be forthright. I think that it sets a good foundation for candor and truthfulness. So that's my opinion.
Yeah, I've looked at a lot of resumes where folks had a PhD and it is required just a bachelor's with a preferred master's. So if all I receive is a resume and they list, that they've been like a senior executive somewhere, and I'm like, they seem very overqualified for this position they applied for. That's where it's really important to have a cover letter to explain why there is this discrepancy. If I have a cover letter with a resume that explains it, I'm more likely to look at it again. But if there's no cover letter and they just seem to be very overqualified for the position, I put that in my that'll be, the end of the pile if I need to look through it again, and I'll take a look at those. But I think the cover letter is so important in those instances.
I'll amplify one thing you said there, Rebecca, is maybe it's not that you have a PhD, maybe you're an executive and you're moving down into a middle level position. That's a red flag sometimes in industry because of cost for salaries, right? There's an expectation there that perhaps you may not fit. And you want to try and help address that in the resume if you can, or in the cover letter, so that you can talk about purpose of applying to something different. Just know that can be a trigger for employers to be reluctant if they think that you could be priced out of what the pay band would be for that position they're opening.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you both. That's an important question. I know sometimes we get those a lot in our appointments. So it's really important to really talk about that purpose. And I think you were very, right on the point of, being candid and being upfront and sharing why, what is prompting the decision. So we have some questions coming in, and I'm thankful that you guys are asking questions because we only have about 10 minutes left and we're going to end right on time. So as you're thinking about your questions, write those up and put those in chat. So I'm going to go with just the next question. Typically in a resume, job experience is listed chronologically from most recent to your current job. How do we handle a career break? So they said like a mom break in a resume. So it's, perhaps it shows that gap in time. Is that a consideration for you all when you're looking? Does it spark questions? And how would you advise them to handle
that? I think, so I've seen that a bunch. I think, again, the format is a little bit regimented. So I would still advise to go in sort of chronological order and list the job positions you have. And this is, again, where I would just go to the cover letter. So if there was something in your resume that I was like, this is a good fit for the job, then I would, and I'm like, oh, there was a space of time, I would probably then go read the cover letter. So if you know that there's a gap, I would certainly address it in the cover letter. And again, it doesn't have to be like this long, drawn out explanation or anything like that. It just could be, I took a family break, I've done this now, and I'm back in the field, or whatever else it is that you want to say about it, that you feel comfortable. You don't have to say family break, right? If you don't want to say that in a cover letter. But I do think that you want to address it in some way when it is a question that comes up on search committees a lot when we see a gap in experience, but it's not we're going to throw this resume out. It's more, does it make sense? Okay, a person's qualified, sort of move on. So it's not an ending conversation, but it definitely sort of can raise questions.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. Like, if I see a gap in years, it's a question I raise in the interview. If you have the qualifications to hook me, right? So that's the takeaway. Customize your resume to match what I'm looking for. And I would even say if you did something that's completely left field different than what you're applying for, I personally am okay with leaving that chunk of time off your resume. We'll talk about it, but hook me on what you're good at that matches what I'm looking for. Meet my needs as an interviewer, right? But gaps aren't a problem at all. Transitions and careers are perfectly fine.
Yeah, I agree with them. As long as you can explain and be transparent about why there was a gap there, it doesn't seem to really affect like who we're going to interview.
Very well. So we're having some more questions come in, so I'm excited. So if a job posting requires a master's degree or any degree, PhD, and you're in the process of pursuing that degree, should you apply for that position? So I haven't, my degree has not been conferred yet. I haven't yet walked across the stage, but I'm in process. Do you want to see my application? And if so, when?
So I'm going to jump in first because I think academia is a little different, right? So again, we're at Mason and many institutions are state institutions. And if we say a master's degree is required and you do not have a master's degree, we really can't interview you. So again, this is the difference between sort of the required and then again, would like it if it was there, right? If master's degree is like it, and if it's there and you're in process, great, apply. But truly, we're sort of, I don't remember that, hamstrung? I don't know what that saying is, right? We can't do it unless we have these required sets. If you don't have the required qualifications, we're not allowed to interview you. But I think it could be different in industry.
Yeah, I think for some of our positions, you can apply while you are still working on your degree. At least for the ORAU positions, some of them you still may need to have your degree conferred before you start, but some of our interns and fellows, they don't start until, it could be 2 or 3 months down the road after you graduate. So if you could get an offer in January, but not start until May or June. So as long as you will have the degree by the time you step foot in the facility, at least on the ORAU side, that works. That works for us.
Yeah, and in the commercial sector, right, we typically want candidates that are qualified and good, right? So if I have a position where I say a master's is required, you may not be able to get hired for that, but if you have a good resume, you probably get a good interview. Like we always have a junior position associated with a more senior one in that case. And if you're applying for a degreed engineer position and you're still an engineer, then just apply instead to the engineering internship position. That's always another avenue. So you can always apply for a position. Usually companies like myself will have multiple levels open, and you can apply for something that you meet the letter of the qualification of. And if you put your resume in at a higher one and it's a good resume, you will get something. So in my sector, it's a little less rigid unless it's a government position that, to you guys' point, that you have to have a degree to get on in the building. So.
And can I amend one thing? So the other thing is, again, read the job description carefully, because a lot of times, particularly if there's doctoral students interested in a faculty position, we work in academic year cycles. So it will say, we'll consider candidates whose degree will be conferred by the spring or something along those lines. But it's usually pretty clear in the verbiage. But so that's a welcoming invitation to sort of what we call ABD, all but dissertation, right, for those candidates to then apply for the position.
So the other thing, similar to what you talked about earlier, Rebecca, is, right now we are recruiting for candidates that are graduating in May, right? We get the most qualified candidates that start work next summer through interviews we do in the fall. We tend to see that it's the pick of the litter, so to speak. Now, we do still absolutely hire throughout the spring for graduates that are graduating in the spring. However, that's just kind of the cycle. We tend to pick up a lot more internships in the spring, and we tend to do more of the full-time degreed engineers that are coming out in the May timeframe, but we interview them in the fall. So I encourage you to start actively interviewing a solid year before you graduate. You'll get your best foot in the door with the best type of positions, at least in my sector.
Thank you, Julaine. That's really good. I'm glad you shared that timeline. We have about probably 6 more questions coming in and about 4 minutes left in our workshop. So if just one of you want to take one of these questions speak to you, I'll let one jump in and then we'll move along. Should you list on your resume if you're currently pursuing a master's or PhD? For example, should I be listing that you're a candidate for graduate in 2021? So I'll let just one of you take that. Or yeah, you can nod along. Yes.
Yeah,
good.
definitely.
List it.
Yeah.
Next question.
Yeah, next question.
Have you had any experiences interviewing someone from the humanities? So someone who's maybe majored or done their degree in history, politics, or English, and interviewing them for some STEM positions?
I definitely have. Usually that looks like they had a bachelor's in humanities and then a master's in a STEM degree. And it's sometimes that's a good benefit, because a lot of our postmasters and, okay, my dogs are moving my table here. The postmasters and PhD programs, there's a lot of writing involved. So if you have a background in English or journalism or anything like that, that can actually serve you very well. But most of the ORAU positions, they do require the STEM degree as the most recent degree. Now in other industries, that could be different.
All right. How should I ask someone to be my mentor? Good question.
I can take this one. Okay, so I think could be a very awkward conversation, and you don't usually say, will you be my mentor? So I think the best thing you can do is have a very real project. Could you review this paper I want to publish? Can I pick your brain about this project that I'm having a difficulty with? Be very specific about what that person is, so the ask that you're asking them is relatively small and you're starting a relationship. And again, the sort of mentor relationship, I think, will flow from that, but you want to have a very concrete, relatively small thing to start that conversation. Can I do an informational interview about what it's like to be that the person's doing, and only going to take 10 minutes of your time, and then you can sort of grow the relationship from there. But I think it's hard to just jump into a mentorship kind of relationship.
Okay, great. I really love that tip. So the last question, and then we can answer the rest in chat. Caroline, can you answer the question about volunteer in chat? The last question I really like for all of you guys, if you guys can just touch on it a little bit, is if I receive an offer and the salary doesn't meet my expectation, is it okay to negotiate? And are there any tips that you all have around negotiation?
So yeah, I think it's reasonable to negotiate. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you continue on.
Yeah, I think it's important, because if you're coming in and you're feeling like you're being underpaid, you're not going to be happy, you're not going to stay. As an employer, I know that. However, you have to do it with respect. You have to do it with a measure of how do I say this? Humbleness, but candor too. Like, you know, you just got to be realistic about this is where you need to be, so that you can get to the finish line. Everyone wants to just get across the finish line. So.
Yeah, and there's going to be, I mean, well, one thing, you should know what your minimum can be, just so you can, you know, standard of living without sacrificing anything. And the ORAU's opportunities, we're dealing with government agencies, which usually base they get a stipend because it's an education and training program. So they base their monthly stipends or yearly stipends on the GS scale, based on your education and years of experience. So there really isn't a lot of wiggle room when you're working with federal agencies. You can ask for maybe other things, such as like we offer like relocation packages or allowances to travel to conferences or meetings. But in regards to salaries or stipends for ORAUs with the government agencies, you kind of need to understand that they might not be able to go up from whatever offer they give you.
Yeah, and I would just like to just amplify what Rebecca said in regards to other things. So sometimes people's hands are tied a bit on salary. You know, for example, travel, professional development opportunities, that sometimes people have separate pools of money for those sorts of things. So think about what other things that might make the job attractive to you. And in terms of a tip, there's a lot you can do in terms of research to know what a reasonable salary would be. So if an employer is offering you a reasonable salary and you're not happy with it, that makes the tension harder. So you might want to come in with some evidence or some, so again, in my world, it's really easy because all of George Mason's salaries are up on a website, right? So you know exactly what the previous person was making, how long they had been there, all those sorts of things. And you might not be able to get that in the position you're looking at, but you should be able to get some idea. This is where you can go to a trusted other who might have an idea about what current standard is, because what you don't want to do is if they've offered you a very competitive salary, be like, the salary's out of range, I can't deal with it, because it doesn't jive with the industry that you're working with. And again, thinking about other things other than salary that might make the job very attractive.
Thank you all. That's really good advice. Also, for those attendees, if you need help on researching appropriate salaries, please come visit us or virtually at Career Services. We can help you with some resources so that you can really research salary and do that in a mindful and thoughtful way. So I just want to take this time, because we're right at time, to say thank you, attendees, for joining us and participating in the chat and really being involved. And most especially, I just want to thank everyone from our panel. So excited to have you guys and really appreciated the knowledge that you share. So I know, Julaine, we'll probably see you or some of your partners again at the fall career fair that's coming up here at Mason. For those attendees, all of our fairs this semester are all virtual. All of our employer events are virtual. You can check out ORAU's positions. They're in Handshake right now, so they have some positions posted there. And all of Mason's positions for those faculty tenure positions will actually be on Mason HR's website, so you'll have to go over there to check those out. So thank you again. I appreciate everyone's your knowledge. I appreciate the time that you've given to us, and just thank everyone who participated today. And hopefully attendees, you're going to your next JumpStart workshop soon, which is resume writing at 2:30.
Thank you all. Good luck, everybody.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah, thanks for coming.